Hi, it's Sharon Henderson here from KEM Business Box. Today I wanted to share my experiences with choosing the right hosting for a website. Just by way of background, with Shopify, Weebly, Wix and those sorts of platforms, what's actually happening is that you're renting your store. You never actually truly own it outright. And that's where these sorts of platforms and WordPress differ. With WordPress stores, you have full control over your content, and WordPress is actually your content management system, or CMS. And that's great because it means that no matter what, it is yours, or the content is yours and it's completely within your control. And you have to host that content somewhere, and that's where website host companies come in. When I started out in the very early days, when I was just finding my feet with WordPress and website development, I used a company called Domains for Less, simply because it was recommended to me by a friend, because that was what she was using. Domains for Less is a New Zealand company, which made sense to have someone that was relatively local. So that's what I did, and I didn't really have a lot of experience with what my expectations should be as far as performance of my site and speed and that sort of thing. But what I was finding, especially on the back end, so the back end is where you do all your changes that are then reflected on the front, which is what everybody else sees. So what I was finding was I go into the back end of my site and make a change, and every time I wanted to change from one screen to another, I was waiting up to 30 seconds, and it drove me crazy, but I thought this must be normal. And then as my knowledge started to increase and I started to use different software, or plugins as we tend to call them, with WordPress, I was finding I was getting notices saying that I couldn't use this particular software because the specifications were not met in terms of my site and my web hosting, which was really annoying. So I battled with the host company. I kept ringing up and saying, look, it seems to be really slow. And they tell me that they use state-of-the-art equipment, that their sites are fast, and it must be something at my end. And they blamed it on my internet connection. And so I ran speed tests and I contacted them, and that took forever, because you know how long it takes to speak with any of these companies. But anyway, they did the test eventually, and they confirmed that there was no problem with my internet speed. So that kind of had me looking back at my host company. And once I started to get these messages that I needed to increase the specs of my hosting, and I spoke with them again, finally, after trying to blame my own computer as well. Yeah, that was interesting. Of course, once I tried running the site on other computers, there was exactly the same problem. Anyway, I digress. Basically, in the end, I went back so many times that they couldn't blame it on anything else anymore. And I spoke with one guy who was a lot more open than any of the others I'd spoken with. And he told me on the quiet that what I was actually on in terms of hosting was a real budget package, and that I would need to upgrade to their superior plan if I wanted to get the performance and the specifications that I was after. And when I found out the costs involved, it was horrendous. So I really didn't know what to do. So I spoke with another representative at the hosting company, and he was really nice. And he said to me again on the quiet, look, you need to look elsewhere, because there are a lot more competitive companies out there than us that have much better quality technology and much better prices. So that was that. I started to look and see what else I could find. And I was still very inexperienced, and I got wooed by a company called Host Papa that you may or may not have heard of, who promised me the world. They told me that their technology was state of the art, top of the range, high specs, and it was going to be absolutely wonderful. So I signed up with them, and lo and behold, my site was still running at a snail's pace, which was incredibly frustrating, having had to go through the nightmare of moving everything over. And also at this stage, I wasn't particularly experienced at how to move a site, how to migrate a site from one host to another. And I tell you, it's not something that you really want to be doing if you don't know what you're doing. I lost half my site. It was a nightmare, and that was a paid for funded migration by Host Papa too, but they completely messed the whole thing up. It was awful and stressful. And eventually, fortunately, I managed to cobble most of it back together and got the site mostly working, but I had to go through and re-customize everything so that it looked how it did before the migration. Anyway, once the site was up and running again, I was still finding front end and back end were working so horribly slowly. Once again, they tried to blame it on my internet connection and even my computer. And they really took advantage of my inexperience and gave me the runaround for months. And yeah, I think the turning point for me, the real, yeah, I really had enough when I met with a client at my office, and I was trying to show her what I could do for her, trying to show her my portfolio site, and everything loaded so slowly that I actually lost the client. I found out later that she didn't feel that she could entrust the building of her website with me when my connection, as it seemed to be, was so slow. So that was it for me. I'd really had enough. Anyway, I belong to a Facebook group for the theme builder that I used. And they were a pretty supportive bunch. And there was one particular guy there who I'd had quite a lot of contact with. He'd give me quite a lot of advice as I was developing my own skill set. Anyway, I shared my experience with him, and he gave me the lowdown on website hosting. And what he explained to me was that most of these companies, like Domains for Less, like Host Papa, and so many others, what they do is they have shared hosting plans. And what that basically means is that they have one server and they cram as many customers as they can onto that one server so that they can make as much money as possible. The downside of that is that if you have too much strain on the server, then everybody's website runs slowly. If you have one set website that really is maxing out the resources, everybody else's site suffers. And if one site goes down, they all go down. So the downtime issue is also a big deal. So what this guy suggested was that I use his server, because he had his own dedicated server that he used to host clients' websites. And he told me the price, he told me everything that I would get for that, unlimited email. There were a whole host of things, and it seemed amazing when I compared it with what I had been getting and how much I'd been paying. So it seemed to me to be a no-brainer, and I went with that. And as I got to know him more, we came to a deal where I paid for a year up front for web hosting, and he allowed me to use his servers for my clients free of charge, which again was amazing, was brilliant. And my site was, well, all my sites were running really fast, and it was brilliant. And I had his support when I needed it. He helped me migrate my sites. It was awesome. The problem that arose was that this guy, everything had to go through this guy. So he would be my first port of call for any issues that I had. And the problem was that he did this big job for a client, and he built the site on the client's own server. And then as soon as it was finished, the client closed off the server. and basically stole the site and didn't pay him for it. So it was a really, really mean thing that this particular woman did. And you're probably wondering, well, how did this impact on me? Well, it did, because what happened then was that this meant that my hosting guy ran into financial difficulties, and it hit him hard financially. And the next thing I knew, he wasn't responding to any of my questions. He wasn't available for anything hosting related, and I started to get really concerned because I had client sites on his servers by this stage, and while everything seemed to be still working despite the fact that he'd gone AWOL, I was petrified that one day all our sites would just go down because he wouldn't be paying for his servers, and that would be the end of it. So it was really, really scary stuff. So after a while of not being able to get hold of him, I had to find another web host company, and I had to migrate every single site over to them. The upside is that because I'd had all these experiences, I knew what to look for in a host company this time around, and I went for a cloud-based web hosting company with state-of-the-art technology, and I was really happy with the package that I had. And the sites, the speed of the sites was amazing. The support was 24/7, so I could always make sure that there was no downtime on any sites. And yeah, they were really good. So that was a silver lining, was that my rather tumultuous journey meant that finally I'd found a really good cloud-based web hosting company with a really good reputation, really good technology support, and the performance of the sites was just incredible. So all my sites are now with this particular company, and my clients are really happy, and I pay for my own dedicated servers, no sharing, lightning fast sites. And the good thing is that if ever a site goes down, it doesn't affect any other site on the servers because it's cloud-based. So where one server falls down, another one in the cloud picks up or takes up the slack. And so you have pretty much a guaranteed uptime for all the sites. So once again, my experiences mean that for my customers' stores, they get the absolute best when it comes to website hosting, which is absolutely crucial. If you've got a slow site, it impacts on your SEO, so the ranking. When someone does a search, it basically means that you are ranked higher than other competitors if you have a high-speed site. So from that perspective alone, it's essential that your site runs fast. And of course, if you've got a slow site, who's going to hang around these days and wait for the screen to load? I think we have, what, a 7-second attention span online? So if your site takes too long to load, they'll just go to a competitor's site. So for a lot of reasons, your web hosting is one of the most crucial decisions you will make in terms of how it impacts on your business. So we take all of that pain out of the equation for you, because you are guaranteed excellent hosting with every KEM is in a box store. So it basically means it's hassle-free and you will have a positive experience and none of the pain that I went through with your store management. I think that's it for now.